Hello, welcome to my channel. If you haven't been here before, I actually have an introductory to the channel. This is for the purpose of discussing the Antagonist role-playing game, which I put together. Hopefully you've looked at that first video, which introduces kind of the theme and mechanics, the very basics of the mechanics of the game. And this has sparked your interest, and now you want to know more about how the game works. Well, before I go into that, the test copy actually came a few days ago, so I'm going to show that off. Hey, look at this. This is it, or will be, almost. We do have a little edit to do. You'll notice this lady's face kind of is hanging off the page. It got wrapped into the bleed that we didn't take account for, so we're going to scoot that over in the final copy. It's exciting. My first book. Now, on to why you're probably actually here, because I've titled this How Dice Rolling Works in the Antagonist RPG. It's pretty simple, actually. The mechanics split success not into a binary like a lot of games do, where you either succeed or you fail, but rather there's a spectrum. And I figured there was kind of 4 important points in the spectrum. The abject failure and the success are 2 points, but in between those two, we have the partial success. This is where your character has either not quite reached their goal but made progress, or they have reached their goal but there's been a complication that kind of sullies it a little. And then we have a critical success, which actually a lot of games do use. So how well you do is based on the roll of 3 10-sided dice. And your character has a set of attributes, and attributes will be added to one or more of these 10-sided dice. And when I say one or more, I mean a given attribute. Every single roll, every single dice will have some attribute added, typically. But it's not necessarily the same one for every one. Sometimes you're doing something that calls upon a variety of different talents, and how good you are at a variety of things will influence your overall success level. And that's kind of how we're going to represent it. So you have your 3 10-sided dice, you have a target number that you're going to hit, and I kind of set 9 as the medium difficulty. If something is difficult enough where you need to be concerned, but not so hard that an average person would consider it an inconceivable task, the difficulty usually is set to 9. So you're rolling your 3 10-sided dice, and you're checking to see how many hit 9 after you add an attribute to each of those. So for instance, if you're doing kind of a standard combat action and you're using a heavy weapon, you might add your brawn attribute to 2 of the dice, and then because agility is a factor even with heavy weapons, you add your finesse to the final attribute. So you roll your 3 10-sided dice, you'd add, say, a brawn of 3 to the first 2 of them, and then you'd add your finesse to the final one, and you'd count up each of the dice individually and see how many hit your target number of, say, 9. If you hit none of your dice, you're going to fail. If you hit on 1 of the 3 dice, you get a partial success, which brings you part of your way to your goal, or again, it could, depending on the situation, result in some sort of consequence with success. 2 is kind of your standard success. You did what you were trying to do, and 3 means you went above and beyond. Pretty simple system. The only other thing that you usually keep track of is that situational modifiers can adjust your target number up or down. If you are in a situation where you have some sort of advantage, it adjusts your target number down. If you are in a situation where you have disadvantage, it adjusts your target number up. And the rules kind of go over various situations where these advantageous or disadvantageous scenarios could occur. The other thing that can happen is that the player can voluntarily increase the difficulty that they're shooting for to do something a little bit more impressive than kind of the standard action. You know, if you're hitting your opponent, but you want to, let's say from classic movies, carve a Z into their, it's really hard to do backwards, carve a Z into their face to leave a lifelong mark of your entanglement with them. You might ask the GM, you know, can I increase my difficulty number to do this harder thing? And the GM will be like, well, what are you thinking? And you're like, well, carving a Z isn't that hard. I learned how to do that in grade school. I'll increase my target number by 1. And the GM is like, you know, it's a little bit more difficult when you're doing it on a person than when you're doing it on a piece of paper with a pencil. So I'm going to need you to increase it by at least 2 or 3, depending on how good you want the handwriting to be. You're like, well, I can't leave poor handwriting on my arch rival. I mean, what are the other potential rivals that I might accrue in the future going to think of me? They're not going to think me a worthy rival. So I'm going to increase this target number by 3. It's going to be a good Z. And you make your roll, and if you get a failure or a partial success, you don't do any better than you normally would. But if you get 2 hits on your 3 10-sided dice, you succeed with the newly more impressive feat that you agreed with your GM that you would accomplish. And if you get 3 successes, wow, that's super impressive. But that's not usually going to happen just because of how odds play out. If you're not aware, the rolling system creates kind of a bell curve that pushes all of the results towards the center. All things being equal, you will either get you will usually get partial successes or you will get normal successes. You aren't going to get a lot of complete failures or complete successes. And I think that's really part of playing relatively competent people, is you don't fail abjectly all the time, but also, you're not a superhero, so you're not leaping tall buildings in a single bound a lot of the time either. And that's kind of what the system is designed to represent. This has been my discussion on dice rolling. There's a lot of other mechanics in the game involved, and just knowing how the testing of your character and figuring out their accomplishments should give you kind of an idea of the thought process behind some of the game. There will be more of these videos soon, hopefully. This one's already running pretty long for just a dice rolling video, so I'm going to end it here. Hope to see you soon, and hope you enjoyed it.